Hi everyone, my name is Jacob Paris Gold, and I'm a fifth-year biochemistry major at Cal State Los Angeles. For the last 4 years, I've worked in the lab of Dr. Yixian Wang in the Department of Chemistry and Biochemistry. Today we're going to be talking about research, what research is, how you can get experience doing research if you're interested, and what careers in research actually look like, because there's a lot of them. Today's video will cover 4 main topics. What is research? Why you might want to do research, or not, how you can start doing research, and research careers. Let's start by talking about research in general. The way I like to describe research is as the pursuit and creation of knowledge, often through experimentation or logic and argument. People who do research use something called the scientific method to find new information. The scientific method is a complex and never-ending process that starts with reading about all the research that has already been done, in papers and in textbooks, which we together call the literature. From all these past observations, we then create some sort of explanation, which we call a model, that describes something about how the world works. For example, scientists had to create a model claiming that our cells use oxygen to produce energy through respiration to explain their observations that oxygen was necessary for animals to live. Now, from your model, you can generate predictions, called hypotheses, of what will happen in particular scenarios. For example, if cells really do use oxygen to produce energy, then if I measure the amount of ATP in cells, which is the molecule that provides energy to certain reactions, I would expect to see a decrease once I stop giving the cells oxygen. Now, this is where experiments come in. As a scientist, you design experiments to test your hypotheses as precisely and thoroughly as possible. If your results agree with your hypothesis and support your model, you go and share your findings with other scientists. Then you can go back to the lab and start developing even more hypotheses to learn more and more about your model. If your results don't agree with the hypothesis, though, well, then you take a good hard look at your model and adjust it, or even change it completely, to better represent what you see in your experiments. Now let's talk about who is in a lab. Now, almost every lab at a university will be run by a professor who helps manage all of the lab's different projects and helps mentor the students and staff. Now, these people will include undergraduates pursuing a bachelor's degree, graduate students pursuing some research degree, such as a master's or PhD, and finally, staff, such as postdoctoral fellows, research technicians, and other people hired to do research in the lab. Now we can take a look at what do you actually do if you work in a lab. Well, of course, this varies widely by what field you're in. And so today I'm just going to be talking about the perspective of a biochemist, but hopefully this will be applicable to other natural sciences. People in a lab will generally have something called group meetings, where everyone in the lab will get together to discuss research that's already been done, such as in papers and literature, to talk about the experiments they're doing and any new results they've obtained, and even to talk about their ideas for new experiments. Of course, as a scientist, you also have to be doing your experiments, so designing them, performing them by going to the lab, and of course, troubleshooting your experiments when things go wrong. And in truth, most of your time is spent doing experiments. And so you'll keep doing experiments as you develop your story and as you learn more and more about your model, until you have an interesting story to tell the world. And when you're ready to do this, you can either write about your results in a publication, or you can travel and present your work at conferences, say through an oral presentation or by presenting a poster. Alright, so at this point, we've talked a little bit about what research is and what it's like to do research. But now let's talk about why you might even want to do research, or why you might not want to do research. So in my experience, there are many benefits to doing research as an undergraduate, or even as a high school student. For one, doing research will greatly deepen your knowledge of the material in your field. Of course, classes are only meant to give you a basic understanding of a certain area, because they're intended to provide a broad scope of some field. However, in research, you need to learn about one particular area in as much depth as possible to bring you to the very forefront of what we currently know about it. So of course, doing research is going to give you a much more thorough understanding of your field. Secondly, doing research will help you develop lots of skills that will help you in your careers, whether you want to get a job or apply to graduate school. For example, doing research can give you lots of experience using certain experimental techniques or machines, as well as teach you how to give a good presentation or use different types of software. In addition to this, working in a research lab can help you learn to work collaboratively. Of course, in a research lab, a project might be worked on by 3 or 4 students at once, not just one independent investigator. Doing this will help you learn to work with different types of people. Finally, and more broadly, doing research lets you think creatively and critically. It's one of the few positions where you can come up with your own ideas and then pursue them. and that can be really rewarding on its own. Now, more broadly, there's also tons of benefits to doing research as a career. For one, if you like reading about past research, developing your own questions, coming up with and designing your own experiments, well, then research would be a great career for you, because that's what you'll be doing. It should always be a priority to like what you do. In addition to this, doing research, as we talked about before, gives you a lot of creative freedom relative to other jobs out there. You can be the one driving the directions of your research projects and deciding what areas to explore further. Pursuing research as a career can also be rewarding because you, the scientist, are the one creating our knowledge and advancing human understanding. Knowing that for yourself can be exciting. Finally, some research areas give you the ability to mentor students, which can be extremely rewarding if you want to train the next generation of scientists or deconstruct systemic barriers to science education. Now, at this point, I want to take a pause. We just went over a bunch of reasons why research can be rewarding, both in your time as an undergraduate and in your career. However, I don't say this to pressure you or anyone else into doing research, because it's not for everyone. So try not to be pressured into doing research just because it's what a lot of people in science do, or because you think it might make you more competitive in your applications. And I say this because there are many alternative career paths out there, some of which we'll talk about later. If it turns out that you don't like doing research, then it'll be really hard to deal with all of the challenges that come with it, such as failed experiments or long hours. So remember to actively ask yourself if this is something you enjoy doing. Alright, so now we've talked about what research is and why you might want to do it. But now let's talk about how you can actually go about starting research. A great place to start is to do research with one of Cal State LA's many great research groups. Before you go about joining a research group, you need to find fields that you're interested in. You can do this by taking many different classes and eventually deciding on your major. During this time, it can be really beneficial to go to your professor's office hours and ask them about the research topics in their field, or talk about the things that interest you. These professors really want to help you develop your career, and they'd be more than happy to give you advice. Now, once you've done that, you're going to want to look at what research is being done at Cal State LA. And you can do this by going to your department website and looking at the faculty research descriptions. For instance, the Department of Chemistry and Biochemistry has a page in their website called the Directory of Faculty and Staff, describing all the research that's done in the department. Finally, if you find a professor whose work you're interested in, you can shoot them an email, introducing yourself, talking about why you're interested in their research, and asking to set up a meeting where you can talk about their different projects and whether you're able to join their lab. It can also be helpful to ask professors to recommend readings or papers in their field. If all goes well and the lab has open positions, the professor might just invite you to work in their group. Aside from the work done at Cal State LA, there are also many off-campus research opportunities. When you do research off campus, it's typically sponsored through a specific program at another university. Off campus research is usually done over the summer, and because these programs are funded by the university, by grants, or by certain companies, they can usually pay you a sizable stipend and provide housing over the summer. Taking a summer to do off campus research can be really beneficial because it allows you to do research in other fields, say those that might not be studied at Cal State LA, and lets you experience what it's like to be at a research focused university. I also want to mention that there's this great website called pathwaystoscience.org where you can search for off-campus research opportunities and filter by what year you are, what field you're looking to study, and a whole bunch of other things. So now, we've talked about what research is. We've talked about why you might want to do research. We just talked about how you can actually start doing research as an undergraduate. We're going to close by talking about what research looks like as a career and talking about all the many, many paths that you can take to do research. We're going to start by looking at what's called the traditional pathway to research. And just because it's called traditional doesn't mean it's the best, doesn't mean it's what everyone does, and certainly doesn't mean it's the only path if you want to do research. In nearly all cases, if you want to do research, you start with an undergraduate degree. This is typically a Bachelor of Science, and the purpose of it is to teach you all of the fundamental basics of the science you're going to be pursuing. Traditionally, students then advance to some sort of research degree, typically the PhD, occasionally with a master's in between. It is here in your research degrees where you are trained not just about basic information, but on how to do research as a scientist. Finally, in this traditional pathway, scientists with a PhD will go on to be postdoctoral fellows, or scientists who work as staff members in another person's lab, before eventually pursuing jobs such as in academia or in industry. Academia meaning you're hired by a university as a professor, or industry meaning you work to do research for a company. So that's the traditional pathway. But in reality, almost every student who eventually pursues research will deviate from this pathway in one way or another. For example, many students decide to pursue work or volunteering in a gap year between their undergraduate degrees and their research degrees. Other students might use this gap year to, say, fulfill a fellowship or to pursue a post-baccalaureate program to better prepare them for a research degree. Further, academia and industry are far from the only places in which you can do research. For example, you can do government research at a national lab. You can also go into a variety of research adjacent jobs, such as research consulting, the business, say, of research companies, law, such as patent law, or even teaching. Finally, some graduates of the PhD can even get jobs in industry without pursuing a postdoctoral fellowship. So now let's take a brief moment to look at those two common categories of research jobs, academia and industry. In academia, you work for a university, which means in many cases you will be doing a combination of research and teaching. You can define your own research questions, as long as you can procure funding, meaning you can actually define the directions of your research. You have a high degree of job security, if you have tenure, and you'll probably spend a lot of your time doing work, especially in the first couple years. In contrast, if you're working for a company in industry, in which there's a lot more jobs because there are many more companies than universities, you are generally assigned broad goals in line with the company's objectives or profits, and then are allowed to design your own approaches to these goals. So there is still a relatively high amount of creative freedom if you work for a company. Additionally, in industry, you might have more extensive resources, it might be paid higher than you would in academia. And this is simply because industry research is inherently profitable. Now, if you're at Cal State LA and you do decide to pursue a research career and get a PhD, there are a variety of programs out there to support you. By far, the most extensive of these programs is termed the MORE programs, or Minority Opportunities in Research. The MORE office coordinates a variety of research support programs, the most popular of which are the RISE program and the MARC program. Both of these programs are funded by the National Institutes of Health, or the NIH, and support students pursuing research careers in several ways. The MORE programs offers a large annual stipend, typically several $1,000s per year, extensive training through workshops and seminars. For example, during the semester they hold weekly research seminars, and over the summer they hold a variety of workshops designed to show you how to write a personal statement, how to write a CV, how to present a poster, how to be ethical in science, and many, many other things. Additionally, the MORE programs will pay for some of your conference travel and have a dedicated writing center with Dr. Jimena Hernandez to help you write all of your applications or other statements. Additionally, at Cal State LA, we also have the LSAMP programs, or the Lilly-Stokes Alliance for Minority Participation, the NSF CREST Center for Energy and Sustainability, PREM, which is the Partnership for Research and Education and Materials, and NASA Direct, all of which are designed to help and support students at Cal State LA pursuing undergraduate research. And these programs often do not require you to pursue a PhD. And with that, we are at the end of our video today. If you have questions, feel free to email me. My email is at the very beginning of this video. It is jacobparisgold@gmail.com. I wish you all luck in all of your pursuits, whether you're interested in just starting research or going to graduate school. And for your reference, I've attached a variety of links and helpful documents to the end of this video. So please take a look at those if you're interested in learning more. Thank you.